AITA for refusing to let my younger brother live with me after a family tragedy. I, 34 am, live in a modest apartment in a mid-sized city. I've always been the responsible one in my family, which isn't saying much because my parents, while loving, weren't the best at adulting. My younger brother, Alex, 28 am, has always been the opposite of me. Charming, funny, and sociable, but extremely unreliable and reckless. Over the years, I've bailed him out financially and emotionally more times than I can count, and honestly, it's taken a toll on my own life. I try to set boundaries, but he has a way of making me feel guilty whenever I say no. A few months ago, my parents passed away suddenly in a car accident. It was devastating for both of us. Alex and I were extremely close to them, obviously, but while I grieved quietly and methodically, Alex spiraled. He stopped working, started drinking heavily, and completely neglected his health. When he realized he had nowhere to stay, he'd been living with friends and moving around sporadically. He came to me, expecting that I would take him in without hesitation. Now, here's the context for my decision. My apartment is tiny. I live alone in a one-bedroom with barely enough room for myself, and I work from home. Bringing Alex in would mean giving up my personal space, my routine, and, quite frankly, my mental health. I told him straight that I didn't think it was a good idea for him to move in permanently, though I offered to help him find a temporary solution for a month or two while he got back on his feet. He reacted badly, insisting that family should stick together and that I was choosing comfort over blood. I tried reasoning with him. I suggested looking into renting a small studio, checking into a sober living program, or even staying with friends while he got stable. Alex dismissed all of these, saying they were temporary and cold solutions. He kept saying he needed the family environment to heal, implying that only being under my roof would count. I started to feel manipulated and cornered. Things escalated over the next few weeks. Alex began showing up at my apartment unannounced, sometimes in the middle of the night. He'd leave dishes in my sink, smoke in my hallway, and bring friends over, claiming he was just being social. I asked him repeatedly to respect my space, and he would apologize, but the behavior continued. My work was suffering, my social life was suffering, and I could feel my own mental health deteriorating. Eventually, I told him bluntly that I could not have him living with me under these conditions, and that if he didn't find a place to stay, I would have to call him out. He accused me of being cruel and unsupportive. The breaking point came about a month after he first moved in temporarily. I had an important work deadline and was exhausted from managing Alex's constant presence. I told him he needed to leave and gave him a strict 2-week deadline. He exploded, saying I didn't care about him or our parents, and threatened to never forgive me for abandoning him. I stuck to my boundary. He left, angry and bitter, but also depressed. Afterward, several of our relatives and a few close family friends confronted me. They said I should have done more, that I should have let him live with me at least for a little while, and that I was being cold. Some even suggested that refusing him showed a lack of empathy and love for my family. I explained my reasoning, that helping him did not mean sacrificing my health and stability, that I had offered alternatives, and that living together permanently was not feasible. Many seemed sympathetic in theory, but I still got the sense that I was being judged as selfish. Since then, Alex and I have barely spoken. He won't answer my calls or texts, and I've heard through mutual friends that he's telling people I kicked him out and abandoned him after mom and dad died. Meanwhile, I've been trying to support him in ways that don't involve cohabitation, helping him find an apartment, helping him set up therapy, and sending small care packages. He has not responded well to any of it. I know family is important, and I truly do want the best for Alex. But I also feel like I have a right to my own space and boundaries. Living with him permanently, given his current behavior, would have been detrimental to both of us. I feel guilty, but I also feel justified. I don't want to be the villain in his story, yet I also can't compromise my own well-being. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my younger brother live with me after our parents' death, even though it's made him very upset and cause a rift in our family? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in after she lost her job and apartment. I, 36F, have a cousin, Rachel, 33F, who I've been close with since childhood. Growing up, we shared a lot of experiences and stayed in touch through school and into adulthood. Our lifestyles are quite different, though. I have a steady job, a modest 3-bedroom house, and a structured routine. I budget carefully, maintain savings, and value my personal space. Rachel, on the other hand, has always been more impulsive and has struggled with financial stability. She has a history of moving frequently, relying on friends or family when things go wrong, and making decisions without much long-term planning. A few weeks ago, Rachel called me in a panic. She had just lost her job at a small marketing firm and, at the same time, received an eviction notice because she fell behind on rent. She explained that she had nowhere to go and asked if she could move in with me temporarily while she figured out her next steps. Initially, I felt sympathetic because losing both a job and housing at once is overwhelming. However, I also immediately realized that letting her move in would be extremely challenging. My house is modest, and one of the bedrooms is a home office. I also have a cat, and my life is built around a predictable daily routine. Adding another adult to the household, even temporarily, would disrupt my work, my personal life, and my mental well-being. I also worried that Rachel's definition of temporary could extend indefinitely, given her lack of stable income and savings. I told Rachel that I could not let her move in permanently, but offered alternative ways to help. I suggested helping her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contributing to a security deposit for a new apartment, assisting her with job applications, and offering financial support for essentials during the transition. I stressed that I wanted to help her, but that my home was not an option. Rachel did not take this well. She insisted that living with me was the only solution and claimed it would be just a few weeks. She argued that friends and family were either unavailable or unwilling to help and implied that I was being selfish. She said a real family member would put her needs above their own convenience and suggested that my refusal meant I didn't care about her. I tried to calmly explain that my decision was about practicality, not a lack of compassion. I reminded her that I was offering multiple forms of support that didn't involve moving in. Over the next week, Rachel continued pressuring me. She called multiple times a day, sometimes leaving long voicemails describing her hardships, and once even showed up at my door unexpectedly. She repeated that I could make things easier by letting her stay and emphasized her lack of options. I continued to maintain my boundaries while offering support in other ways. The situation began to affect my mental health. I became anxious whenever my phone rang, worried about the stress of an extended stay if I gave in. I also realized that compromising my space and routine could create resentment and tension, both with Rachel and within my household. I wanted to help her, but I also had to protect my home and mental well-being. Family members have weighed in as well. Some say I should just let her move in because family helps each other, while others agreed that my concerns were valid and that having her live with me could create long-term stress and conflict. The mixed advice made me feel guilty, even though I knew that setting boundaries was necessary. Eventually, Rachel found a friend who agreed to let her stay temporarily. However, she continues to contact me frequently, venting about her difficulties and implying that I could have done more. I continue to provide emotional support, help with job applications, and financial guidance when possible, but she seems dissatisfied with anything that does not involve living with me. I feel torn because I want to maintain our relationship and support her, but I also need to protect my home, routines, and mental health. Allowing her to move in would likely create ongoing stress and conflict that I am not willing to take on. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in after she lost her job and apartment. Even though it has caused tension and guilt, I feel like I am helping her in responsible and sustainable ways without putting my own life on hold, but she and some family members perceive my actions as selfish. I want to support her through this difficult time, while maintaining boundaries that protect my household and mental health, but I am unsure if standing firm makes me the villain. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding by insisting on my dietary restrictions? So I, 28F, have a severe allergy to nuts, specifically peanuts, tree nuts, and even traces of them can cause a dangerous reaction. I've had an EpiPen since I was a teenager and have been very careful about what I eat. My sister, Emma, 32F, has always been the opposite. She loves experimenting with cooking and often uses nuts in desserts, sauces, and even in what she calls gourmet garnishes. Emma got engaged about a year ago, and she was over the moon. I was thrilled for her, of course, but from the beginning, there was tension between us over the wedding plans. I wasn't invited to the initial planning meetings, which I understand, because she wanted it to be intimate with just her fiancé and a few close friends. But later, when the caterer was chosen, she casually mentioned the menu included dishes with nuts, and I had to remind her that I couldn't risk even cross-contamination. She waved it off, saying they would make sure to accommodate me. Fast forward a few months, and I had sent her a detailed list of foods I could eat, explained cross-contamination, and even offered to coordinate with the caterer to make sure nothing would put me at risk. I thought that was reasonable. Emma's response was lukewarm. She thanked me, but didn't seem enthusiastic about making any changes. At this point, I felt uneasy, but I trusted that she would ensure my safety because, well, I've been clear about my allergy my entire life. The day of the wedding arrived, and the ceremony was beautiful. Everything was going smoothly until dinner. The menu included a nut-based salad as an appetizer, a main course that seemed fine, and a dessert bar where almost every option had some kind of nuts in it. I was planning to avoid the salad and the desserts, but then Emma came over and insisted I try a dessert that had nut topping. I politely reminded her of my allergy, and she said, "Oh, it's just a little. You'll be fine. I made sure to pick the safest ones." I felt my stomach tighten, and I said firmly that I could not eat anything with nuts. This is when the first real argument happened. Emma got defensive, saying I was overreacting and that everyone is being careful. Just relax. I explained that even a tiny crumb could send me to the ER. She scoffed and told me I was ruining the mood and that I needed to trust her. Other family members started noticing the tension, and some whispered about how I was being difficult. I refused the dessert, and then the caterer came over, asking if there was any issue. I explained my allergy, and the caterer confirmed that many of the dishes had cross-contamination risk. At that point, I asked if they could provide me with a nut-free option, and the caterer said they hadn't prepared one because they assumed Emma had handled it. I then turned to Emma, who seemed frustrated and flustered. I told her that I wasn't willing to risk my health, and that if nothing safe was available, I would have to skip dessert and possibly even the main meal if cross-contamination couldn't be avoided. Emma snapped. She yelled in front of the guests, "This is my wedding, and you're making it about you. Can't you just eat like a normal person for one day?" I was shocked. I tried to stay calm and said, "I'm not being difficult. I'm allergic. I could die if I eat nuts, and I need to protect myself." She then started crying and stormed off, calling my behavior selfish and saying she didn't want me near the food. Some of the relatives were awkwardly trying to intervene, saying we should all just calm down. The rest of the evening was tense. Emma refused to speak to me, and my parents were caught in the middle. I didn't attend the dance or the cake cutting because I felt unwelcome and didn't want to risk accidentally eating anything unsafe. When I left, Emma sent a group message to the family saying I had ruined her wedding and made everyone uncomfortable. I tried reaching out, later to explain that my actions were entirely about my health and that I hadn't wanted to cause drama. She blocked my calls and messages. I have since heard from some distant relatives that she tells people I made a scene over nothing. I feel awful because it was her big day and I never wanted to ruin it. But at the same time, my health is not negotiable. I'm starting to wonder if I was too rigid or if I could have handled it differently. AITA for insisting on my dietary restrictions at my sister's wedding, even though it caused a huge scene and apparently ruined her day. I've considered that I might have been too blunt, but I honestly don't see how I could have approached it differently without risking my life. I did try to coordinate with her ahead of time and gave her the list, but she didn't seem to take it seriously. I just want to know if I overstepped or if I was right to stand my ground. The fallout with my sister has been painful, and I don't know if we can repair our relationship now. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after years of family drama. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family. Growing up, my parents divorced when I was 10, and my dad remarried a woman who made my teenage years incredibly difficult. My mom did her best, but she was overwhelmed and often absent due to work. I have two younger brothers, one of whom has always been extremely close to my father, and the other caught somewhere in the middle. Family events were always tense, and I developed a strong preference for keeping a distance from most gatherings. Fast forward to now. I live in a different state from my family and only see them occasionally. Despite the distance, I've always tried to maintain some semblance of connection because my cousin, whom I'll call Lila, 27F, has been a bright spot in my life. Lila and I have shared many good memories, and I always consider her a close friend, not just a cousin. Earlier this year, Lila got engaged. I was thrilled for her and even offered to help plan aspects of the wedding from afar. I try to stay involved by sharing ideas for decorations and themes, but I made it clear that I might not be able to attend depending on my work schedule. Things started to get complicated once my extended family got involved. Lila's mother and aunt, my aunt, have always been very controlling. They took over almost every wedding-related decision and made subtle jabs at me during the planning process, often criticizing my ideas or implying that I was too distant to be useful. I brushed it off at first, thinking it wasn't worth confronting. About 3 months before the wedding, Lila's mother sent me a passive-aggressive email listing all the events I was expected to attend, including a bachelorette weekend and a rehearsal dinner. She emphasized that everyone was counting on me to be there and that it would be unthinkable if I didn't show up. I felt cornered because I had already explained that I might not be able to attend everything due to work. I replied politely, stating my limitations and offering to contribute in other ways. She didn't respond, but I soon noticed subtle social media posts painting me as the unreliable cousin for not RSVPing immediately to every event. The breaking point came when Lila sent me a private message asking why I hadn't confirmed my attendance. I explained that I couldn't attend most events due to work and that I would come to the wedding if my schedule allowed. Lila responded with guilt-tripping messages about how much it would mean to her to have me there and how my absence would break her heart. I felt conflicted because I genuinely care about Lila, but I also felt that the pressure I was under was excessive and manipulative. Around the same time, I learned that my father had been making comments to my siblings about how disappointed he would be if I didn't attend. My younger brother, who is usually neutral, started calling me repeatedly to convince me to fly out, citing family expectations and tradition. The more I resisted, the more everyone seemed to pile on, framing my choice as selfish and hurtful. I tried to compromise by suggesting I could send a personal gift, a video message, or even contribute financially to help cover part of the wedding costs. I hoped this would show my support without requiring me to travel. However, my aunt responded on a group chat saying, "Gifts are nice, but they aren't a substitute for family presence. We can't force anyone, but it's disappointing to see someone care so little about their cousin." This message went to multiple family members, essentially shaming me publicly. Feeling cornered, I had a long conversation with Lila. I explained that while I loved her, the way the family was pressuring me felt manipulative and toxic. I asked if she wanted me there, if I couldn't be present for the other events. She admitted she did, but also said that everyone else would be upset if I skipped the pre-wedding festivities. I felt stuck. After several sleepless nights, I made the decision to decline attending the wedding altogether. I sent a heartfelt message to Lila explaining my reasons, my work constraints, the overwhelming family dynamics, and my desire to avoid escalating tensions. I offered to help in other ways, including sending a customized wedding gift, writing a personal note for the ceremony, and contributing to her honeymoon fund. The response was immediate and brutal. My father accused me of throwing away family ties. My brother called me selfish, and my aunt publicly criticized me on social media, framing it as an insult to Lila. Lila herself sent a few messages expressing disappointment, saying she understood my reasons but was still hurt. Other relatives reached out, with some saying I should reconsider for the sake of family unity and others taking my side, saying it's unreasonable to pressure someone to travel and attend under stress. I've held firm on my decision, but it has completely fractured my relationship with several family members. The stress has been intense, and I feel guilty, but also relieved that I'm setting boundaries. Lila and I have talked a few times since the wedding, and she seems to understand, though I can tell there's lingering sadness. I'm now getting messages from distant relatives who are shocked and upset, asking why I would allow family drama to ruin this special day. I feel conflicted because while I know I did what was healthiest for me, the family backlash has been severe and it's straining my relationship with people I used to care about. So, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding, even though I genuinely care about her, simply because of the toxic family dynamics and excessive pressure I faced. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension and betrayal. This is going to be long because the situation is complicated, but I want to be as detailed as possible so people can understand where I'm coming from. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've had a rocky relationship for most of our lives. Growing up, our parents were extremely involved in every aspect of our lives, which meant that competition between us was constant. While I try to focus on school and my own interests, Emily always seemed to get more attention, whether it was for academics, sports, or even minor things like outfits or hobbies. Over the years, I learned to accept that she was the golden child in our family, and I tried to distance myself emotionally, which worked for a while. Things got worse when Emily started dating her current fiancé, Mark, 27M. I met him once or twice before their relationship became serious, and I felt a little uneasy about him. He was charming and funny in public, but I noticed subtle ways he tried to control Emily, whether it was questioning her decisions or making jokes that were really digs at her intelligence or career ambitions. I tried to mention my concerns to Emily, but she brushed them off, saying I was overreacting or jealous. I let it go, assuming that she knew him better than I did. The turning point came about 2 years ago. Emily invited me to a small weekend getaway with her and Mark. I was hesitant, but agreed because I wanted to maintain some family connection. During that trip, Mark made several comments that I found inappropriate and manipulative, mostly targeting me. For example, when I suggested we go on a hike, he told Emily it was a waste of time and subtly mocked me for being overly ambitious. On another occasion, he interrupted a conversation I was having with Emily about my work, making a sarcastic remark that completely belittled my accomplishments. Emily laughed it off, saying he was just joking, but I could feel the tension and humiliation building. After that weekend, I started pulling away. I limited contact with both Emily and Mark, but I still try to maintain a civil relationship, sending birthday messages and occasional texts. I also confided in my parents about my discomfort, hoping they would acknowledge my feelings. Instead, they accused me of overreacting and sabotaging Emily's happiness. They reminded me repeatedly that this was her life and her choices, and that I should be supportive no matter what. I felt like I was being gaslighted by everyone I love the most. Fast forward to last month. Emily got engaged and started sending out wedding invitations. She sent one to me with a personal note, but I couldn't bring myself to respond positively. Part of me wanted to confront her and explain why I couldn't attend, but I knew that would probably result in more arguments and guilt tripping. So, I replied politely, declining the invitation. I explained that I couldn't attend due to personal reasons, without going into the history or the tension with Mark. This is where things escalated. Emily called me multiple times, crying, asking why I wasn't attending, and saying that I was breaking the family apart. She said that my absence at the wedding would be seen as a personal attack, and that she couldn't believe I was choosing to throw away our relationship over something she considered trivial. My parents also got involved, telling me I was being selfish and heartless, and that family obligations come before personal grievances. My friends and my partner have been supportive of my decision, saying that I need to prioritize my mental health, but I still feel torn. The final straw came when Emily's fiancé reached out via social media, tagging me in a post and accusing me of trying to ruin their special day and claiming that I was being immature and spiteful. I didn't respond, and instead, I blocked him. Emily's messages have continued, though, alternating between sadness, anger, and guilt-tripping. She has even hinted that she may reconsider our relationship after the wedding, implying that my absence means I no longer care about her or our family. I know that weddings are supposed to be joyful, and I hate the idea of causing hurt. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on whether I'm being unreasonable. On one hand, family and traditions are important to me, and I do love my sister despite our history. On the other hand, I've spent years feeling invalidated, dismissed, and even belittled by both her and Mark. I can't imagine spending one of the most significant days of her life in a situation that would make me feel anxious, unsafe, and resentful. I feel like attending would compromise my mental health and also risk a public confrontation that could spiral out of control. Since declining the invitation, I've gotten mixed reactions from other family members and mutual friends. Some understand and support me, emphasizing that I have the right to set boundaries. Others are calling me a terrible sister who is letting pride and resentment ruin an important family moment. I've thought about making amends or attending only the ceremony, but I worry that even a short presence will feel performative and insincere and may still lead to tension with Emily and Mark. So, I'm left wondering, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of tension and feeling manipulated and belittled? I don't want to be the villain, but I also can't compromise my mental health and well-being for a single event, no matter how important it is to her. I feel guilty, but also frustrated that my attempt to set boundaries are being interpreted as cruelty. Has anyone been in a similar situation? And how did you navigate attending major family events under these circumstances? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his family move in after he lost his job. I, 38F, have a younger brother, Alex, 33M, who has always been a bit impulsive and struggles with financial responsibility. Growing up, he was the adventurous sibling who often made decisions without thinking about the consequences, while I have always been the cautious one, careful with money, and structure my routines. Despite our differences, we've always been close, and I've tried to help him over the years in various ways, lending small amounts of money, giving advice, and occasionally letting him stay at my place for a few nights when emergencies arose. But I've always had to set boundaries because he has a tendency to overstay or rely on others for longer than intended. About 6 weeks ago, Alex called me in panic. He had just lost his job at a small tech startup that shut down suddenly. On top of that, he fell behind on rent and received an eviction notice for his apartment. He has a wife, Sarah, 32F, and 2 kids, Lily, 7F, and Ethan, 5M, who would all need a place to stay. He asked if they could move in with me temporarily while he looked for work and got back on his feet. At first, I felt sympathetic because I knew this was a stressful situation. Losing a job and housing at the same time is incredibly difficult. However, I quickly realized that having Alex, his wife, and their children move in would be extremely disruptive to my life. I live alone in a modest 3-bedroom apartment. One room is my bedroom, another is my office, and the third is used for storage and occasional guests. My daily life is structured around work, exercise, and maintaining a quiet, organized home. Adding 4 people to the household, even temporarily, would create chaos. I was also concerned about finances, as I don't have the budget to support another family indefinitely, and about the strain on my mental health and space. I told Alex that I could not let them move in permanently, but offered alternatives. I suggested helping them find a short-term rental, contributing toward an Airbnb for a temporary stay, helping with job applications, assisting in applying for rental assistance programs, and even contributing a modest amount to cover essentials. I emphasized that I wanted to support him and his family, but that my home was not a viable option. Alex reacted very poorly. He insisted that moving in with me was the only practical solution and claimed it would only be temporary, a month or 2 at most. He argued that friends and other family members were either unavailable or unwilling to help and implied that I was being selfish. He suggested that a real sister would put family needs above her own comfort, and criticized me for refusing to help in the way he wanted. Over the next few days, the pressure increased. Alex called multiple times a day, sometimes leaving long voicemails detailing their hardships, and Sarah texted me as well, expressing frustration and implying that I could make their situation easier by letting them stay. They also suggested that finding short-term housing was impossible or unaffordable, which I know is not true because I had already researched some potential options they could pursue. I continued to maintain my boundaries while offering support in other ways, but the repeated pressure was emotionally exhausting. The situation began to affect my mental health. I felt anxious whenever my phone rang, worried about the stress of having 4 additional people in my home. I realized that even if they promised a short stay, it could easily extend indefinitely given Alex's lack of stable income, mounting debt, and the needs of 2 young children. I want to help them succeed, but I also needed to protect my home, my routines, and my well-being. Allowing them to move in could lead to long-term tension and resentment that I was not willing to risk. Some family members weighed in. A few said I should just make the sacrifice and let them move in because family comes first, while others agreed that my concerns were valid and that having them live with me could create long-term stress, strain my resources, and disrupt my life. The mixed feedback left me feeling guilty, even though I knew that setting boundaries was reasonable and responsible. Eventually, Alex and his family found a friend who agreed to host them temporarily. However, Alex and Sarah continued to contact me frequently, venting about their difficulties and implying that I could have done more. I continue to help with job applications, offer emotional support, and provide financial guidance where I can, but they seem dissatisfied with anything that does not involve living with me. I feel torn because I want to maintain our relationship and support them, but I also need to protect my home, my routines, and my mental health. Allowing them to move in would likely create ongoing stress, potential conflict, and disruption that I am not willing to take on. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his family move in after he lost his job, even though it has caused tension, guilt, and criticism from family. I feel like I am helping them in responsible and sustainable ways without putting my own life on hold, but I am unsure if standing firm makes me the villain. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me after she got a new job. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me after she got a new job. I feel like this situation has spiraled way out of control, and I honestly don't know if I'm being unreasonable. A little background. I, 33F, live in a small, 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I've always been independent and fairly private. I work full-time as a software engineer and often put in extra hours to save up for a house I hope to buy within the next few years. My sister, 29F, has 3 kids, 7M, 5F, and 2M. She's a single mom and has been struggling financially since her divorce a few years ago. I love my niece and nephews, but I've never been the type to babysit regularly. I'll watch them occasionally, but my life is pretty busy, and I like having my apartment to myself. A few weeks ago, my sister got a new job that requires her to work late nights a few days a week. She called me and asked if I could help out by having the kids stay at my place during her late shifts. At first, I thought she meant one night here and there, so I said I could see if I was free. Then she clarified she wanted me to have them 2 nights a week indefinitely. That's when I told her I couldn't commit to that. I explained that my apartment is small, and it's already crowded with my own stuff. I don't have the space for 3 kids, and I need my home to recharge after work. I also mentioned that I have plans to save for a house, and extra expenses would make that harder. I offered to help in other ways, like paying for a babysitter or taking them on weekends when it worked for both of us. My sister got upset and said I was being selfish and didn't care about the kids. She accused me of always prioritizing myself over family. I tried to explain that I do care about them and that I've helped her in the past in ways that were more manageable for me, like picking up groceries for her or watching the kids for a couple of hours when she had appointments. But she said this was different, that the kids need stability and a safe place when she can't be there, and that I'm their closest family in the city. She started bringing up our childhood, saying I always had the easier life and that I don't understand her struggles. Things got tense over the next few days. She called me multiple times, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, trying to guilt me into changing my mind. I held my ground, saying I just can't have them stay regularly. I suggested alternative options like looking into a daycare or asking another relative, but she said no one else could help. She also mentioned that her new job doesn't allow for flexible scheduling, so she has no choice but to have the kids somewhere. A week ago, she dropped by my apartment unannounced with all 3 kids, saying she needed to run an emergency shift and that I would figure it out. I was home and clearly stressed. I told her no, that I wasn't prepared and didn't have a space. She got furious, saying I was abandoning her and the kids. She left after a long argument, but the kids seemed upset and confused. They've been asking when they can come over again, and I feel awful for upsetting them, but at the same time, I feel like I need to maintain my boundaries. After this, she sent me texts calling me cruel and selfish. She also posted a message on social media about how families should support each other, tagging me, which has caused some drama among relatives and friends. Some have told me I'm being too harsh and should step up for family, while others say I have every right to set boundaries and prioritize my own life. I want to help my sister, but I don't feel like I should be responsible for having 3 kids at my apartment multiple nights a week. My sister has no other family nearby who can consistently take them, so I feel trapped in this moral dilemma. I don't want to lose contact with my niece and nephews or damage my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to sacrifice my home, privacy, and future goals for something I can't realistically manage. I've tried to suggest compromises, like hiring a babysitter she can rely on or having the kids come over for shorter visits. But she keeps insisting that I'm the only option. Every discussion seems to turn into an emotional confrontation, and I don't know how to navigate it. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me 2 nights a week indefinitely, even though she has no one else to watch them. I feel like I'm just being practical and setting reasonable boundaries, but everyone seems to think I'm heartless. I love my niece and nephews and want to be part of their lives, but I can't have them living at my apartment regularly. I want to help in ways that are sustainable for me, not ways that will cause me stress or resentment. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do you balance family obligations with your personal boundaries when the stakes feel so high? I'm genuinely torn because I feel guilty, but I also know that taking on this responsibility would be unfair to me. I just want to do the right thing without losing myself in the process. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother's girlfriend stay at my house during a family emergency. I, 32M, recently found myself in a situation that has created a huge rift in my family. I've always tried to maintain boundaries, but apparently I went too far, and now I'm being painted as the villain. I want to share the full story and see if I truly am in the wrong. A bit of context. My younger brother, Tom, 27M, has been dating his girlfriend, Sarah, 25F, for about a year. I met her a handful of times at family events, and while she's pleasant enough, I don't have a close relationship with her. I've always maintained a certain distance from his romantic partners because I value personal boundaries and my own space. Last week, our family got the news that our father had suffered a serious health setback. He was admitted to the hospital with complications from a chronic condition, and it was serious enough that everyone was urged to be available in case the situation worsened. Naturally, I rearranged my schedule to be able to visit and help coordinate family matters. Tom called me a few days after he got the news, sounding flustered and stressed. He explained that he and Sarah were supposed to travel for her work conference, but with the sudden family emergency, he wanted to cancel. The problem was Sarah's apartment had some maintenance issues, and she didn't have anyone to stay with for the next few days. Tom asked if she could stay at my house. I was caught off guard. My house is small, and I already had my partner and our 2 kids living there. I explained that having another adult, especially someone I barely know, stay in our space would be incredibly difficult. I also told him that with everything going on, I needed to focus on my family and my father, and adding someone else into the mix would create more stress. I suggested a hotel or a friend who lived closer to her work. Tom was immediately upset. He said I was being unreasonable and selfish. He argued that Sarah had nowhere else to go and that this was a family crisis, so I should step up. He reminded me that I had stayed at his apartment once when I was in town for a weekend. implying that I owed him some reciprocation. I held my ground. I told him that my offer to help my father in coordinate visits was more than enough, and that extending our hospitality to someone I barely knew wasn't something I could commit to, especially at such short notice. I also reminded him that our home is our safe space, and bringing in an unfamiliar adult at a stressful time would disrupt the balance we have. Tom ended the call frustrated, but said he would figure something out. A few hours later, I got a text from Sarah herself, asking if she could stay. I politely declined, explaining the same points I had made Tom. She texted back saying she didn't understand why I was being so cold and that I was supposed to support family. The situation escalated when my mother got involved. She called me and said she was disappointed that I wasn't more accommodating. She said that even though Sarah wasn't blood, she's still part of the family now, and I should be making her feel welcome. My siblings also chimed in, mostly taking Tom's side, and suggested I was overreacting and being unnecessarily rigid. I felt attacked. From my perspective, this was about personal boundaries, not a lack of care for my father or family. I offer my support in ways that mattered, helping coordinate hospital visits, arranging schedules so everyone could see our father, and even picking up groceries and supplies for Sarah if she needed. But physically having her in my home, that crossed the line for me. Things got more complicated when Sarah, still upset, started posting on social media about feeling rejected by the family during a crisis. Some of my relatives reached out to me directly, questioning why I wouldn't help her. I tried to explain my side, emphasizing the practical difficulties and my desire to maintain a manageable environment during a stressful time, but the responses were largely unsympathetic. The tension between Tom and me has been palpable since. He barely speaks to me now, and family events have been awkward. I know I could have said yes and avoided the drama, but I can't shake the feeling that it would have created more stress than relief. I also worry about setting a precedent where every future partner or guest might expect to be accommodated in my home, regardless of our relationship. I do feel a little guilty about how everyone reacted, but I also feel strongly that my home and family life are private and that saying no in this situation was justified. I'm wondering if I'm being selfish or if I actually had valid reasons to refuse. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay at my house during our father's medical emergency. Here's a little extra context about our living situation. We have a small 2-bedroom house. My partner and I work from home, and our children's routines are sensitive. They get unsettled easily. We also don't have a guest room, just a couch in the living room, which is not ideal for someone staying multiple nights. On top of that, Sarah has never stayed at our house before, and we barely interact beyond occasional family dinners. Adding another adult to this mix seemed like it would create more chaos than help. I've considered offering alternative forms of help, like letting her borrow a car or helping pay for a nearby Airbnb. But I feel like my family interprets that as cold or inadequate. I genuinely want to help in ways that are manageable for me, but my refusal to let her stay has been taken as a personal attack. This situation has created a lot of family drama, and I feel torn. On one hand, I want to be supportive during a crisis. On the other hand, I feel that maintaining my family's stability and boundaries is also important. So, Reddit AITA here. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding overshadow my son's graduation. I, 38F, have always tried to be the good sister, the one who shows up, helps out, and puts family first. My younger sister, Jenna, 32F, has always been more dramatic and tends to plan events that feel like they're more about her than anyone else. Recently, this tendency collided with one of the most important moments in my life, and now my family is divided, leaving me questioning if I went too far. My son, Liam, is graduating from high school this year, and I couldn't be prouder. He's worked incredibly hard despite struggling with ADHD, and this graduation means a lot to him and to me as a single mom. I started planning a small family celebration at our local community center with decorations, his favorite food, and inviting a few close family friends. It's not extravagant, but it's meaningful to Liam and represents years of effort and achievement. A few months ago, Jenna got engaged. She and her fiancé, Mark, won his summer wedding, and from the start, she asked me to help in multiple ways: bridesmaid, planning, venue scouting, and so on. I agreed, figuring that as her older sister was my duty, but I asked her to pick a date that wouldn't conflict with Liam's graduation in June. She insisted that she wanted a specific weekend because her fiancé's family was coming from out of state, so they booked it. To my dismay, it ended up being the same weekend as Liam's graduation ceremony. I told Jenna immediately that this was a problem. Liam has one shot at high school graduation, and I didn't want him to feel like his accomplishment was overshadowed by a wedding, but she brushed me off. She said that we could just celebrate Liam's graduation after the wedding, or that he could attend the wedding first and then the graduation. I explained that the graduation was at 10 a.m. and her ceremony started at 3 p.m., which would barely give him time to attend both, not to mention the exhaustion and travel time between locations. Jenna said I was being dramatic and selfish, and she assumed that since her wedding was bigger, it would naturally take precedence. I tried to compromise. I offered to host a graduation dinner the night before the wedding, so family could celebrate Liam without overshadowing her event. She claimed that doing anything on Friday night would conflict with her rehearsal dinner plans, and doing it on Sunday wouldn't work either because many guests would be leaving. Every suggestion I made, she shot down, saying she had been planning the perfect wedding for over a year and couldn't change dates or logistics. As the wedding approached, I realized I had to make a decision. I could either attend her wedding, which meant Liam would likely attend without me and miss part of his own graduation, or I could prioritize my son. I chose the latter. I informed Jenna that I would not attend the wedding, but that I would send a heartfelt gift and a letter expressing my love and congratulations. I told her my son's graduation was my priority, and I wouldn't regret being there for him on the day he had been dreaming about for years. Jenna completely lost it. She accused me of being manipulative, jealous, and unsupportive. She told my parents that I had chosen my son over my family, and that I was ruining family unity. My parents tried to mediate, but when I explained my perspective, they seemed to understand my reasoning, but still expressed disappointment. Some extended family members, however, have taken Jenna's side, saying I should have sacrificed for my sister's big day. The wedding day came, and I stayed home with Liam. We had a small graduation party at the community center with just immediate family and a few close friends. Seeing Liam's face light up when he received his diploma made me feel that I had made the right choice. He later told me that he appreciated me prioritizing him and that he had felt anxious about attending the wedding on the same day. After the wedding, Jenna barely spoke to me. She posted pictures and mentioned on social media how sad it was that I couldn't make it, framing it as if I had purposely chosen to hurt her. She even implied that my son's graduation was a minor event compared to her wedding. A few relatives have expressed that I should have put aside my petty priorities for family harmony, which honestly hurts because I feel like my son's achievement should matter just as much. Now, family gatherings are tense. Some relatives are siding with Jenna, while others are supportive of me. My parents are trying not to take sides, but it's obvious that the wedding has caused a lasting rift. I feel justified in my choice, but part of me wonders if I overreacted by outright refusing to attend. I could have tried harder to compromise, but realistically, any compromise would have required Liam to sacrifice part of his celebration or stress through a long day. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding in order to prioritize my son's graduation? Or was I right to stand firm for him, even if it upset my family and my sister? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her teenage kids move in after she got evicted? I, 38F, have a younger sister, Megan, 34F, who has always been a little reckless when it comes to finances and planning. Growing up, she was fun-loving and spontaneous, while I was the cautious sibling who always thought several steps ahead. Over the years, I've tried to help her when she needed it, lending money occasionally, giving advice, and even letting her crash on my couch for short periods when she had emergencies. But I've always had to set boundaries because she has a history of overstaying and relying on others longer than planned. About 2 months ago, Megan called me in a panic. She had lost her job at a small marketing firm, and shortly afterward, she was evicted from her apartment because she had fallen behind on rent. She has 2 children, Sarah, 15F, and Jake, 13M, and told me that they had nowhere else to go. She asked if she and the kids could move in with me temporarily while she figured out her next steps. At first, I felt sympathetic. Losing a job and housing simultaneously is overwhelming. However, I quickly realized that allowing them to move in would create serious logistical, financial, and emotional challenges for my household. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house with my partner, Alex, 40M, and our 2 cats. 1 bedroom is ours, 1 is used as a home office, and the 3rd is occasionally for guests but also stores some of my work equipment. Our days are structured around work, exercise, and our quiet routines. Adding 3 people, especially 2 teenagers who require space, privacy, and attention, would completely disrupt our household. I was also concerned about finances. I do not have the budget to support another household, even temporarily, and I worried about the toll it would take on my mental health and personal space. I told Megan that I could not have them move in permanently, but offered alternative ways to help. I suggested helping her find a short-term rental, contributing toward an Airbnb, assisting with job applications, helping her access government or community housing programs, and offering a modest amount for essentials. I stressed that I wanted to support her, but my home was not a viable option for them. Megan reacted poorly. She insisted that moving in with me was the only feasible solution and claimed it would only be temporary, a month or 2 at most. She argued that friends and family were either unavailable or unwilling to help and implied that I was being selfish and unsupportive. She said that a real sister would prioritize family over convenience, and she accused me of turning my back on her in a time of need. I tried to explain that my refusal was about practicality and maintaining boundaries, not about lack of compassion. I reminded her that I had offered multiple forms of support that didn't involve moving in. Over the following week, Megan increased the pressure. She called several times a day, leaving long messages detailing her difficulties and implying that I could solve her problems by letting them stay. She also sent texts late at night and once showed up at my door unannounced, insisting she had no other options. I continued to maintain my boundaries while offering alternative support, but the repeated pressure was emotionally exhausting. The situation began affecting my mental health. I became anxious whenever my phone rang, worried about the stress of having 3 additional people in my home. I realized that even if Megan promised a short stay, it could easily extend indefinitely because she had no stable income, mounting debts, and 2 teenagers who would require attention and space. I wanted to help her get back on her feet, but I also needed to protect my home, routines, and mental well-being. Allowing them to move in could lead to long-term tension, conflict, and resentment that I was not willing to risk. Some family members weighed in. A few told me I should just make the sacrifice because family comes first, while others agreed that my concerns were valid and that having them live with me could create long-term stress and disrupt my life. The mixed opinions left me feeling guilty, even though I knew that setting boundaries was reasonable. Eventually, Megan found a friend willing to host her temporarily. However, she continues to contact me frequently, venting about her difficulties and implying that I could have done more. I continue to offer advice, financial guidance, and help with job applications and housing searches, but she seems dissatisfied with anything that does not involve moving in with me. I feel torn because I want to maintain a relationship and support her, but I also need to protect my home, routines, and mental health. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her teenage children move in after she got evicted, even though it has caused tension and guilt. I feel like I am helping them in responsible and sustainable ways without putting my own life on hold, but she and some family members interpret my actions as selfish or uncaring. I want to support her during this difficult time while maintaining boundaries that protect my household and well-being, but I am unsure if standing firm makes me the villain. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Sarah, 29F, or at least I thought I was. Growing up, we shared everything from clothes to secrets, and I always considered her my best friend. Our parents, while loving, favored Sarah in subtle ways. She was the golden child, the one who got away with breaking curfew or getting better grades, while I was constantly reminded to try harder. I never resented this too deeply because I genuinely loved my sister and thought she deserved happiness. But that dynamic shifted dramatically after a huge fight that erupted about 10 years ago. It all started when Sarah and I were 22 and 19, respectively. I was in college, living at home, and Sarah had just started her first full-time job. I had been dating someone I truly loved, Mark, 23M, for about a year. Mark was quiet, kind, and genuinely supportive, and I trusted him completely. Sarah, however, had always had a bit of a possessive streak when it came to me. She would constantly check in on me, giving advice about my relationships, or subtly undermining Mark by pointing out flaws she exaggerated. I brushed it off as typical sister behavior, though it was draining. One day, Sarah came into my room unannounced while I was on a video call with Mark. She criticized him for something trivial. He had apparently mispronounced a word, and kept mocking him after I asked her to stop. I told her firmly that it was inappropriate to mock my boyfriend. She snapped back, calling me pathetic for defending him and accusing me of choosing a loser over my own family. I was stunned. I shouted back, defending myself and Mark, and in the heat of the argument, I said something I regret, that she was jealous of me growing up. She screamed, stormed out, and that was the last we spoke for months. The situation escalated when she started spreading lies to my parents. She told them I was rude, ungrateful, and disrespectful, and twisted the story about our argument to make me look like the villain. My parents, who had always been slightly biased toward Sarah, sided with her. I felt completely abandoned and decided to move out immediately after graduation, taking a job in another city far away. For years, we didn't speak. Occasionally, she would text, but it was always passive-aggressive, like commenting on my social media or sending birthday wishes that felt hollow. I tried to reach out a few times to patch things up, but she always responded with sarcasm or deflection. Fast forward to last year, I learned that Sarah was engaged. My initial reaction was happiness. I genuinely wanted her to be happy, but then came the realization that she expected me to attend her wedding. She sent me a formal invitation 6 months before the date, with a note that said, "It wouldn't be the same without you." I froze. I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, and the wounds from our past felt raw. I tried to think rationally about attending. Could I reconcile and make an appearance? Could I be gracious for her special day, even if I felt hurt? I spoke with my therapist about it, and she encouraged me to consider my mental health and emotional boundaries. After much reflection, I decided that attending the wedding would be emotionally unsafe. I drafted a message to Sarah explaining that I could not attend. I tried to keep it respectful and honest. I mentioned that our unresolved conflict from years ago made it impossible for me to be present, that I cared about her, but that seeing her in a celebratory setting without resolution would be painful for me. I offered to meet her privately before or after the wedding if she wanted to reconnect. The response I got from Sarah was explosive. She called me cold, selfish, and immature, saying I was ruining her wedding before it even started. She accused me of holding grudges over nothing and suggested that I had never really loved her. Her fiancé, Jacob, 30M, texted me separately, urging me to attend for the sake of family peace. My parents, predictably, also pressured me, saying I was making the day about myself. Even distant relatives chimed in, expressing disappointment and guilt-tripping me. I didn't respond. I felt like any explanation I gave would be twisted or dismissed. As the wedding date approached, I received photos and updates from mutual friends. Seeing Sarah in her wedding dress on social media, smiling and radiant, was bittersweet. Part of me wanted to reach out and say something, but another part knew that I had made the choice to protect myself. Now, a few months later, the family drama hasn't calmed down. I'm constantly getting messages from relatives asking if I've forgiven her or implying that I owe her an apology. My parents have stopped initiating contact, which hurts in a different way, and Sarah occasionally sends cryptic messages that seem to blame me for everything. I feel torn. On one hand, I believe I did the right thing by prioritizing my mental health, but on the other, I wonder if I should have swallowed my pride and attended for appearances. I want to be clear. I would love to reconcile with Sarah eventually. I still care about her deeply, but I also feel like there needs to be acknowledgement and accountability for how she treated me and the years of silence that followed. I'm trying to navigate the gray area between family obligation and personal boundaries, and honestly, I don't know if I'm in the wrong here. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after our long-standing family feud, despite pressure from her, my parents, and other relatives. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé have a say in my wedding planning. I, 32F, have been planning my wedding for about a year now, and it's been both exciting and stressful. My fiancé, 34M, and I have very clear ideas about what we want, and we try to make sure our day reflects our personalities and our relationship. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been very involved in my life, and when she got engaged last year, I was thrilled for her. She's very opinionated, though, and tends to voice her thoughts as if they are rules rather than suggestions. Emily has been a bit of a drama magnet growing up, but I've always tolerated it because she means well. When she got engaged, she introduced her fiancé, Ryan, 30M, into the mix. At first, I didn't mind, but over the last few months, he started to insert himself into things in a way that's making me uncomfortable. He's not the type to hide opinions, and he seems to think that just because he's dating my sister, he has some authority over my life. The first incident that got me really upset was when we were discussing the wedding cake. I had a very specific baker in mind, someone I've admired for years. Emily said she liked the idea, but thought the cake should be a little more modern. Ryan chimed in and said, "Honestly, if it were me, I'd pick something totally different. That cake is kind of boring." I smiled and nodded, thinking maybe he didn't understand my style. I explained again why I love the cake and why it was meaningful to me, and both Emily and Ryan looked mildly annoyed but didn't argue further. Then came the venue issue. My fiancé and I found a beautiful rustic barn that fits our theme perfectly. We shared pictures with Emily and Ryan. Emily said it was lovely, but Ryan said, and I quote, "I don't know, this looks kind of awkward. I go somewhere more traditional, like a hotel ballroom. Guests will be more comfortable." I felt my face flush. I realized he wasn't giving a suggestion. He was dictating what he thought was better. I told him politely that we appreciated his input, but the barn is our choice. Emily gave me a sympathetic look, but Ryan seemed offended. The breaking point came a few weeks ago. I was planning the seating chart and had specifically requested input from Emily because she knows all our family dynamics and friendships. She helped a lot, but then Ryan started moving people around and questioning my choices. He suggested my cousin shouldn't sit at the head table because he might be too loud, and try to move some of my friends who live out of town into different sections. I calmly told him that the seating is something my fiancé and I decide, and that we appreciate advice, but ultimately, it's our wedding. He got visibly upset and accused me of being controlling and not considering the guests. I tried to stay calm, but I was fuming. I spoke to Emily privately after that. I explained that while I love her and value her opinion, Ryan is overstepping boundaries and trying to take control of decisions that aren't his to make. Emily said she understood, but also looked conflicted. She admitted she likes to keep Ryan happy and didn't want him to feel left out. I asked her to please talk to him and make it clear that my fiancé and I are calling the shots. She said she would, but Ryan hasn't changed his behavior. The most recent incident was about the wedding playlist. I sent out a draft to both Emily and Ryan for feedback. Emily only suggested a few songs, which was fine. Ryan replied with a 10-point list of improvements, including removing certain songs he claimed were inappropriate and adding ones he personally liked, which completely clashed with the vibe we're going for. I didn't reply immediately because I was overwhelmed, but my fiancé suggested we set boundaries now before it escalates. We drafted a message to both of them explaining that while we appreciate input, we will be making the final decisions on all wedding-related matters, and we hope they would respect that. Emily seemed okay when we sent it, but Ryan responded angrily, saying we were being rude and that it was just supposed to be fun. This has caused tension between Emily and me. She keeps telling me she wants Ryan to feel included, but I feel like this is my wedding, not a family negotiation table. My fiancé supports me and says he'll handle it if Ryan becomes confrontational, but I don't want to ruin our family dynamics either. Emily keeps dropping hints about compromise and keeping peace, which feels like pressure to give in to Ryan's demands, but every time I try to compromise, it feels like my voice is being drowned out. Some of our relatives are starting to notice the tension and have asked if Emily and Ryan are upset. I haven't shared the full story because I don't want gossip to spread or escalate the situation. I've tried to stay polite and calm, but I'm honestly exhausted. I feel like I shouldn't have to justify my choices to someone who isn't even officially family yet. On the other hand, I love my sister, and I don't want to hurt her relationship with Ryan, but I also don't want to lose control over the wedding I've dreamed about my whole life. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé have a say in my wedding planning. Even though it's causing tension with her, I feel like I'm setting boundaries, but I also feel guilty because he's part of my sister's life, and she seems to be caught in the middle. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her new fiancé. I never thought I would be the type of person to get into a full-blown family feud, but here I am, sitting at my kitchen table, questioning whether I am really the unreasonable one. My sister, Megan, and I have always been close growing up. We fought like any siblings do, but we shared everything from clothes to secrets, and even our first heartbreaks. We were inseparable, and I always imagined that as adults, we would continue to have that kind of relationship. Everything changed about a year ago when Megan started dating someone named Derek. At first, I tried to be open-minded. I had met him a couple of times at family gatherings, and he seemed polite enough, though quiet. But slowly, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. Derek was controlling in subtle ways, always questioning what Megan wore or who she spent time with. I saw Megan, usually so lively and confident, start to shrink around him. She would second-guess herself, apologize for things she normally wouldn't, and stop talking about her own plans without checking if Derek was okay with them. I tried to talk to her about it a few times, but she brushed me off, saying that I was being too protective or reading too much into it. I felt guilty for even noticing these things, but then came the engagement. Megan and Derek announced it with a huge post on social media. She was radiant in the photos, and my first instinct was to be happy for her. But then the text messages started. Megan wanted me to help with wedding planning, pick out bridesmaid dresses, and even assist in curating the guest list. Derek insisted that his family and friends had to be accommodated, some of whom I had never met, and, frankly, some of whom made me uncomfortable in the past. I expressed my concerns politely, but Megan said, "It's our day, not yours. If you can't support me, that's on you." Over the next few months, things escalated. Derek began inviting his friends over for what he called pre-wedding strategy sessions. They were basically nights where I felt completely unwelcome. One night, I went to help Megan with some DIY decorations, and Derek proceeded to loudly comment on everything I did wrong, telling Megan I wasn't helping efficiently. Megan didn't say anything, and I left in tears. Another time, he dictated seating arrangements and told me my ideas for the ceremony were outdated. It felt like every interaction I had with him came with an undercurrent of judgment or control. The breaking point came when he insisted on a huge, extravagant wedding that Megan didn't really want. She had mentioned wanting a simple beach wedding, intimate and personal. Derek overruled every suggestion and even mocked some of her ideas as boring or cheap. Megan seemed resigned, nodding along, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. I tried one last time to speak to her, gently asking if she was sure about everything. She snapped, telling me I was projecting and that she loved Derek and wanted his input in every decision. At that point, I felt trapped. Every time I tried to be supportive, I was either belittled or ignored. My presence at the wedding felt like it would be an endorsement of everything Derek had imposed on Megan. I began seriously considering skipping the wedding altogether. I tried to reason with myself, thinking about the family fallout. Megan and I have a large extended family, and this wedding would bring everyone together. Missing it could mean permanent damage to our relationship, but I also couldn't ignore how toxic Derek's influence seemed. 2 months before the wedding, I made my decision. I called Megan and explained that I could not attend her wedding. I told her it was because I didn't feel comfortable being part of an event where she seemed pressured and unhappy. I tried to frame it in a loving way, emphasizing that I loved her and wanted her to be truly happy, but I could not participate in what felt like someone else's fantasy imposed on her. She didn't take it well. She yelled at me, called me selfish, said I was choosing Derek over her, and hung up. Since then, family dynamics have been messy. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but it's obvious they are disappointed. My other siblings are divided, some supporting my decision, some criticizing it. Derek hasn't said much to me directly, but I've heard from mutual relatives that he is furious. The rest of my family has started questioning whether I really care about Megan or if I'm just being stubborn and difficult. I've tried to explain myself calmly in group chats, but the conversations always spiral into arguments. I keep asking myself if I should just swallow my feelings and go to the wedding to avoid family drama. But the thought of being in that environment, having to smile and pretend everything is fine while Derek continues to control the day, makes me feel anxious and nauseous. I also worry about what my presence would signal to Megan, that I'm okay with her being treated this way, that I'm okay with her losing her voice. Some friends have told me I'm overreacting, that Megan is an adult and I should trust her choices. Others say I am standing up for what I believe in and protecting my sister from potential harm. I genuinely don't know if I am wrong. I love my sister dearly, and the last thing I want is to ruin our relationship forever. But I also cannot compromise my own values or enable behavior I see as harmful. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I don't approve of her fiancé and how he treats her. I just want to make sure she's truly happy, but I also feel like I'm being pushed out of her life. I keep wondering if there's a way to support her without putting myself in a situation that feels wrong, but I haven't figured it out yet. This whole situation has left me emotionally exhausted, and I honestly don't know what the right answer is anymore. AITA for refusing to lend my sister money after she asked me for a large sum despite having other options. This all started a few weeks ago when my sister, Sarah, called me out of the blue. She sounded panicked, and after some coaxing, she admitted she was in a serious financial bind. She needed $5,000 immediately to cover some unexpected medical bills for her dog. Now, I love my sister and I hate seeing her struggle, but this request immediately set off alarm bells for me. Sarah has always had a habit of making poor financial decisions, and this was not the first time she was in a bind due to her spending habits. She has credit cards maxed out, she often takes loans from friends and family that she doesn't repay on time, and she has a history of gambling small amounts, which I suspect sometimes becomes more than small. When she asked, I paused. I told her I would need some time to think about it, because $5,000 is a lot of money for me. I earn a decent salary, but I'm not wealthy, and I have my own bills, mortgage, and savings goals. She got upset that I didn't immediately say yes and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. I tried to explain that it wasn't about not wanting to help, but about feeling uncomfortable lending such a large sum, especially without seeing a concrete plan for repayment. She argued that it was an emergency, that she had no one else to turn to, and that I was her only option. I asked if she had looked into other alternatives, like using her credit card, borrowing from a bank, or even negotiating payment plans with the vet. She admitted she hadn't because she assumed I would just help her. After that conversation, I made the decision to decline. I told her that I could not lend her $5,000 because it would put me in a difficult position financially, and I didn't trust that she would be able to pay me back given her past financial history. I offered a smaller amount that I could afford to give as a gift, around $500, but she blew up at me. She called me cold and cruel and said I was treating her like a child who couldn't manage her finances. She also reminded me that I've been in her position before and that I should be sympathetic. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that there's a difference between being supportive and enabling someone to keep making poor choices. I reminded her that I had helped her with smaller amounts before, and even then she often paid me back late or forgot entirely. She said that she would have paid me back within a month because she was expecting a tax refund soon, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just her saying whatever I wanted to hear to get the money. The situation escalated when our parents got involved. Sarah called them crying and said I was refusing to help her in a crisis. They confronted me, and I explained my side, my concerns about her repayment history, the size of the loan, and my own financial boundaries. They told me I was being unreasonable and that family should help each other no matter what. I tried to explain that helping her this time could set a dangerous precedent for future requests, and that it might actually harm our relationship in the long run if I ended up in financial trouble or resentment. They didn't see it that way and accused me of being selfish and unsympathetic. Sarah has been giving me the silent treatment for the past 2 weeks. She hasn't spoken to me, and I've seen social media posts where she's implying that I'm uncaring and only think about money. I feel hurt because I genuinely care about her, but I also feel that lending her $5,000 without a clear repayment plan would have been irresponsible. I don't want our relationship to deteriorate, but I also don't want to compromise my own financial security. Friends I've spoken to are split. Some say I'm completely in the right because boundaries are important, especially with family, and helping her could create a cycle of dependency. Others say I should have helped her because she was in an emergency situation and I'm capable of doing so without major consequences. I've thought about negotiating some sort of formal repayment plan with her to protect both of us, but she's so emotional about the situation that I doubt she'd agree to it. The most frustrating part for me is that I offered a smaller gift that wouldn't compromise my finances, but she rejected it outright. She seems to want the full $5,000 or nothing, which feels manipulative. I'm also worried that if I give in now, it will reinforce her pattern of expecting family to rescue her financially instead of taking responsibility. I do want to help, but I want it to be in a way that doesn't hurt me or enable bad behavior. I've been thinking about alternative ways to support her without giving her the money directly. I could help her find a low-interest personal loan, assist with negotiating a payment plan with her vet, or even help her budget, so this kind of emergency is less likely to happen in the future. But right now, the relationship is strained, and she hasn't responded to any messages. I'm worried that my refusal will permanently damage our relationship, but at the same time, I feel like I'm standing up for myself and my boundaries. So, AITA here? Am I wrong for refusing to lend my sister $5,000 because of her history with money, despite it being a genuine emergency? I want to help, but I also want to protect my own financial stability and avoid enabling bad habits. I'm just not sure if I handled it the right way or if I should have done something differently. I feel guilty and torn between supporting family in a time of crisis and maintaining responsible boundaries. I just don't want to be seen as the villain in this situation, but I also feel that helping her blindly could have bigger consequences for both of us. I'm open to suggestions on how to repair our relationship while still being firm about my limits. Has anyone else been in a situation where refusing a family member money caused a rift? And if so, how did you handle it? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding plans, even though she claims I'm being selfish? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but vastly different in others. I am introverted, highly organized, and very particular about how I do things, while Emily has always been spontaneous, dramatic, and more extroverted. Our parents often favored her in terms of attention and praise, which caused some tension between us, but we've generally maintained a functional adult relationship. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, she insisted that I would play a huge role in her wedding. I was excited for her, and I wanted to be supportive, but I had no idea the extent of what that meant until she began delegating tasks that felt increasingly unreasonable. She wanted me to help design the invitations, manage RSVPs, create DIY decorations, plan a bachelorette party, coordinate with vendors, and basically oversee the entire event as her assistant wedding planner. I offered to help in small ways, like giving input on invitations or helping her choose color schemes, but she interpreted my hesitation as disinterest. I have a demanding job in software development that often requires long hours and occasional weekend work. On top of that, I live in a different city than Emily, and traveling back and forth to help her with various tasks became stressful and expensive. I tried to explain this to her, but she said I was making excuses and not valuing family. Her fiancé, Mark, 34M, is very laid back and has offered to handle a lot of the planning himself. But Emily insisted that I was indispensable because I supposedly have an eye for detail that no one else has. About 6 months into the wedding planning, Emily started sending me daily messages with detailed instructions on what she wanted me to do. For example, she would send 10 to 15 pictures of potential decorations and ask me to narrow them down to her top 3 options, often with tight deadlines. She also expected me to track RSVPs manually in a spreadsheet she refused to touch herself. Whenever I pushed back or asked her to let me focus on specific tasks, she would guilt-trip me by saying I was not being the supportive sister she thought I was and letting her down when she needed me most. The breaking point came when she asked me to host a pre-wedding craft day at my apartment for 20 people to create DIY wedding favors. This would require me to clean my apartment, buy all materials, and coordinate everyone's attendance. I told her I couldn't commit to that because of work obligations and the fact that my apartment is too small to comfortably host 20 people. Emily responded with a long text accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive, claiming that my refusal was ruining her wedding experience. She also started posting on social media, subtly criticizing me, saying things like, "Some people just don't understand the effort it takes to support family." I finally told her that while I love her, I cannot take on a role she is expecting from me. I offered alternatives, like helping choose a few key details via video call or giving feedback on the invitations, but I drew a hard line on in-person planning and hosting responsibilities. Emily became very angry, calling me immature, selfish, and ungrateful. She also started sharing our argument with our parents, who told me I should try harder and that I owe it to your sister to help make her day special. At this point, I felt completely trapped. I've tried to support her in ways I can manage, but it feels like nothing is ever enough. My parents are pressuring me. Emily is refusing to accept boundaries, and I am increasingly anxious about interacting with her. Friends I've confided in say that Emily is being unreasonable and manipulative, but I still feel guilty because it's her wedding and she is my sister. 2 weeks ago, I finally stopped responding to her daily planning messages, only replying to urgent or very simple questions. Emily exploded, calling me a terrible sister and threatening to cut me out of the wedding entirely. She's now telling our family that I refuse to be a part of her life, which is frustrating because I'm still willing to be supportive in ways that are reasonable for me. I understand weddings are important, and I want my sister to have a great day, but I also feel that the level of involvement she expects is completely unfair and unrealistic. I try to set boundaries calmly, but she interprets them as rejection. I'm starting to feel like no matter what I do, I'll be cast as the villain in this scenario. So, AITA for refusing to take on extensive wedding planning duties for my sister, even though she says I'm being selfish and unsupportive. AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior at our family gathering and causing a huge fallout. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister, Clara, 28F, is a free spirit, very outgoing and unpredictable. She travels a lot, has a wild social life, and often does things without thinking about consequences. Our parents are very loving, but they tend to indulge Clara, while I'm expected to be the practical, organized one. Recently, our parents hosted a big family gathering to celebrate their 60th birthdays. It was a combination party for both of them, with relatives flying in from all over the country. I had spent weeks helping organize the event, coordinating the catering, seating arrangements, and even making sure dietary restrictions were respected. I wanted everything to go smoothly because both my parents are older, and it was important to me that they have a stress-free day. The day started well. People were arriving. The house looked amazing, and everyone seemed in good spirits. Clara, as usual, arrived late and walked in wearing something completely inappropriate for the occasion, a glittery club outfit that made her look like she was going to a nightclub rather than a family party. I tried to ignore it, hoping she would change or at least tone it down, but she refused and said she liked standing out. I let it go. I've learned over the years that telling Clara to dress more appropriately is usually a waste of energy. The first issue arose during the speeches. My father had written a heartfelt note for the party, and my mother was planning to give a short speech thanking everyone for coming. Clara, without any warning, grabbed the microphone during my father's reading and started telling a story about her college days. The story wasn't offensive, but it completely derailed the moment. She laughed loudly, interrupted my parents, and even made a joke that embarrassed my father in front of our extended family. I was mortified. After that, she wandered around, taking selfies with relatives and posting them live on social media. This might seem minor, but several family members are private people, including our parents. I asked her politely multiple times to stop posting and focus on the gathering, but she brushed me off with a laugh and told me to chill. It's just social media. At this point, I was feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, but I kept my cool for a while. The real breaking point came during the dinner. Clara had invited a couple of friends who were not on the official guest list. I only realized this when they sat down at the head table. I tried to discreetly mention it to her, but she snapped at me, saying, "Relax, everyone will love them. Don't be so uptight." Things escalated when one of her friends, apparently intoxicated, started loudly criticizing the food and complaining that the music was boring and outdated. Several relatives were visibly uncomfortable, and my parents looked embarrassed. I finally lost my patience and told Clara in front of everyone that her behavior was unacceptable and that she was ruining the party. She laughed in my face and said, "You're taking life too seriously. Lighten up." After dinner, I pulled her aside privately. I explained that I had spent weeks planning this event, trying to respect everyone's wishes, and that her actions were disrespectful to me and our parents. I told her that if she cared about our family, she should have at least followed basic etiquette, like not hijacking the speeches, not posting everything on social media, and not bringing uninvited guests. Clara immediately became defensive and accused me of being controlling, judgmental, and jealous. She claimed that I was stifling her personality and that I needed to let people have fun. I argued that fun shouldn't come at the expense of others' comfort, and that she could have had fun without embarrassing our parents or making the guests uncomfortable. She called me a hypocrite because, according to her, I'm always bossing everyone around at family events. At this point, our parents intervened. My mother told us both to calm down and suggested we discuss it later, but Clara stormed out, saying she wasn't welcome at any future family gatherings if I was in charge. The fallout has been massive. Our relatives are divided. Some agree with me, saying Clara's behavior was rude and disruptive, while others think I overreacted and that it's just family drama. Our parents are upset, but they haven't taken sides openly. Clara hasn't spoken to me since the party, and she's posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story hinting that I'm controlling and joyless. I've been feeling guilty and second-guessing myself. Maybe I was too harsh or should have handled it differently. On the other hand, I feel like I have the right to confront behavior that disrespects my parents and ruins a party that I organized with love and effort. I'm wondering if I overstepped by confronting her publicly and directly instead of waiting until a calmer moment. So, AITA for confronting my sister at our parents' birthday party and causing a huge fallout? Or was I justified in standing up for my parents and the event I worked so hard to organize? I haven't heard from Clara in over a week, and I'm worried our relationship might be permanently damaged. I'm torn between wanting to mend things and feeling like I did nothing wrong. Has anyone else had a sibling blow up a major family event like this? I just don't know how to move forward without either compromising my boundaries or losing my sister entirely. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.